Hello everyone, welcome to Animator's Breakfast, which is a podcast where we talk about inspiration with different people in the animation industry. And today, after months of trying and almost succeeding to get him in the studio, I finally have Sean Mullen with me here.
Well, I've been avoiding you.
Yes, there's no broken leg there at all.
You just wouldn't leave me alone.
Yes, this is how you win at life, kids. Pester.
That's it,
Pester.
persistence.
Yes, until you get what you want. Sean, you have a very distinguished career in animation according to your IMDb.
Do I?
Yeah. Cleaner artist than the Lion King, apparently. Yes.
There's two of me, just so you all know. There's two Sean Mullins.
Two.
One of us is real.
Not you.
Yeah, it's not me.
You're just taking
I'm
credit for all this.
I'm a faker.
Yes. What I have found out that you worked on through my brief research. No, I watched a lot of giant animation. Sean, by the way, with Ben Harper and Alex Sherwood, are the creative force behind Giant Animation Studio, which work here in Dublin.
Yep.
Previously just did The Overcoat. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, how'd you find that? That was a co-production, wasn't it?
It was a co-production with an Estonian company called A Film Estonia.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a tough project. It kind of had a history before it came to us. I think it was with a couple of other studios first, and I couldn't finish it for whatever reason. So the project kind of landed on our lap. And it had Cillian Murphy and Alfred Molina already attached, and Hugh O'Connor, the writer and stuff. So it had a lot of things going for it already, and it was just kind of this eccentric kind of take on this classic Russian story, and it just seemed like a cool project. So we just said, yeah, we'd love to give it a go.
Yeah, and you gave it a go.
We gave it a go,
and finished it.
That's it. I aged 40 years in 1 year,
and broke your leg and everything.
Yeah, it was unusual because the project actually. Half the film was actually already finished by the time it came to us, the 2D stuff. So the Estonian company made all the beautiful 2D animation. But when the script came to us, I was like, oh, I have all these ideas, and there's probably like 10 times as many characters as we can afford and stuff. But we had to kind of, as a group, kind of problem solve how we make that practical and so on. But it was a really interesting project. Learned a billion things. So,
one thing I've certainly learned from working in the industry is, I'd say 80% of your job is troubleshooting. And just trying to fix issues.
How the fuck do we fix this?
What is going on here, and how do we fix it?
Yeah.
We have it done. Oh no, it's deleted itself.
We always joke in the studio, and it's like, do all your directing up front. It's like you know the script's written, you do the animatic, and then it's just trying to make it not shit. It's just like putting out fires for most of the production. Which is, unfortunately true.
Yeah, it is sadly true. People don't get that. They think it's a wonderful creative process of wonderful drawings, and no.
No, it's like, what's today's crisis? Oh, cool. Great.
Also, you worked on Geist, which is one of my favorites.
Yes, we way back when we actually started the studio, one of the principles we started the studio on was that we wanted to kind of push animation a bit more. And
cool, yeah.
Animation is typically associated with children and kind of more preschool audience and so on and so forth, and that's great. But we kind of wanted to push animation as more of a medium instead of a genre, and not necessarily make stuff just for adults, but show that you can do anything with animation. And that's kind of where Geist came from. We had this idea to just tell a simple ghost story and be like, hey, you can tell any type of story. So Alex came up with this idea about a lonely fisherman on an island, and we kind of brainstormed it, pitched to the film board, and they thought it was great. So.
It looked beautiful. And
Thank you.
I'm not just saying that. Like, I remember I watched it, and it's rare that it happens, but I was like, okay, wow.
Thank you very much.
My God.
It's great to hear people say that. We jokingly kind of call ourselves like live action filmmakers in that sense, and that we try to make a separation between, that's how you make animation, that's how you make live action. It's like, it's all film. So
but you do work primarily in CG.
We do.
Yeah.
Primarily, yeah. Alex comes from a 2D background as well, so we have that kind of strength in the creative kind of, senior management. But primarily CG.
You did a lot of 2D as well, didn't you? At the start,
bits and bobs. Still primarily CG, but little bits of 2D. Little bits. It's tough. It's just tough.
2D or CG.
2D is just a little bit more grueling, I think.
Yeah.
Alex disagrees. Alex thinks CG is the one that's kind of more of a mess. But so that's where we meet in the middle.
Yes, and that's why you've decided to do CG.
That's it, yeah. I'm like, it's just easier. I actually think that there's no easier or harder, style of anime. I think they all have the pros and cons. They all have their different looks and feels, and it's just whatever's right for your project. I think we do CG because probably we as individuals started out as more CG artists and training in Ballyfermot College, and we took on a lot of advertising work in the beginning, and a lot of that was commissioned based on CG. So we just kind of grew as a CG studio. It could have easily have been a 2D studio if that's maybe where our strengths lay and so on.
Yeah.
But, Yeah.
And speaking of 2D, that's
Beauty.
actually what we're here to talk
Yeah.
about today. So Sean has picked the most heartbreaking and difficult. I was hoping someone would pick something by Isao Takahata at some stage, because when it comes, personally for me, I've never seen someone interrogate the medium of animation so perfectly. And each film that he makes, it's always completely different in a sense. They don't always land well,
Sure.
you know, but they are powerhouses of thinking about how animation should be.
Definitely.
So tell us what you picked there.
So I've picked Grave of the Fireflies. Isao Takahata.
As a tear rolls down his face. Yeah.
And then it's just one of those films, I think, you know, I think if anyone who's watched it usually say two things: that it's great and that it's sad. And they're not wrong. It's an amazing film, and it's incredibly heart stab poignant in its emotion and how it conveys its themes and stuff. So, and it's a film as well that's not just great, but I think it's a film that has significance for me and when I watched it and where I was in life and the decisions I'd made, and it kind of helped me make some decisions about where I wanted to go.
Post-war Japan,
pretty much. Yeah,
of course.
So there's so much to talk about. I did want to talk about the Iron Giant, but you know, bloody Aiden,
bloody
Aiden. But I think this film is just. I'll never forget the first time I watched that. I don't think anyone does.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
And it's such a simple film. It's so there's not a lot going on. It doesn't have these plot twists. There's no crazy character arcs. It's this snapshot of World War II Japan under siege. You know, from you know, the American bombs, and it's about this just brother and sister who through these kind of shitty events are orphaned and left to fend for themselves. Yeah. In this kind of brutal, unforgiving era, which is a product of, you know, war. Yeah. And literally what follows is probably 90 minutes of the most harrowing and elegant, you know, just emotion that I've ever seen on film.
Yeah. And I think harrowing is such a good term. Like when you said that, I was like, oh God, I relived all those moments. It is so harrowing. And it is so difficult.
And it's not cheap emotion. It really works for it, and half the emotion I think just comes from how beautiful the film is made, like the writing, the animation itself, like the acting of the characters, the nuance. The drawings aren't realistic, but you believe that they're real people, and probably the most harrowing thing I think when the film is finished, and all said and done, you know that this story was real, that this happened. Yeah. And it's just one story in a billion. You know, there's so many stories like this about how people have been affected by war and how it dehumanizes society, and people just they fall through the cracks.
And also, it just, I'm trying to keep it together here. It is so, God, I held off the longest time watching it because I was just like, I'm not ready to jump in here again. I can read about it and I can relive it, but sitting down and watching it again, it's a difficult task for anyone, I think.
It's tough. Yeah. And I mean, and that probably leads me on to my next point, which is the first time I watched it. Yeah. I was in Ballyfermot in animation college. I think I was 18. And, you know, you're prescribed this list of films. I've watched all the classics, you know, blah, 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 blah. And I got through them all. And then I left this one till the end because everyone was like, oh, it's this harrowing war story. You know, it's so hard to watch. And I was like, when am I going to be in the mood to watch this? So I remember, I think it was a Sunday, and it was like, I can't remember what time of year, but it was a Sunday afternoon, and the weather was crap, and there was nothing on TV, and I think I'd finished my college work, and I was like, I should just watch that film now, just get it over with. And I was in my parents' house, lived at home at the time. I just went to the spare room, put it in the DVD, and just sat there and just watched it, and I just was lost in this film. I actually like shook when it was over. I just kind of was like, wow, I was a mess. I was just, and at the time, the reason the film is so significant, I think at the time, you know, you're studying animation. I was trying to figure out, you know, if this is what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And animation's tough, you know, it's very challenging, very time consuming. You need a lot of commitment. And I was unsure whether that was for me or not. I loved it, but I was like, is this how I want to, you know, spend the rest of my life? And I think I had reservations about animation as like this medium and the way it was perceived as being for children. And I think I loved drawing and I loved storytelling and filmmaking, and I thought animation was the way for me to combine that. But then in some ways I was worried that going down the animation route I'd be limited in the types of stories I could tell. And then this film for me, like, just it just kind of transcended animation. It just worked on so many levels, and I think for me it was the first time I went, animation is not this genre, it's this medium. It can do any genre. It's an incredible tool to tell any type of story, and I think that made me kind of go, you know what, this is for me, and just the power of that film made me go, no, I'm going to stick with this. So that's why it has kind of some significance for me as well. It's also an incredibly harrowing film, but the emotion is, as I said, it's not cheap. It's not like this, when you watch it again, it's so carefully like lays down its cards in its hand, and from the opening it foreshadows like a lot of the ending. So it's kind of saying, look, this is where you're going. We're not going to pull any punches. You're just going to show you this series of events through these characters' eyes who are full of innocence. And it's just...
I'm going to say spoilers here. I usually...
You can't not say spoilers.
Of course, but if you haven't seen it, I would suggest watching it. Bring some tissues. You're going to cry, definitely.
Bring a box of tissues.
Bring boxes. Go down to Kleenex.com, order online.
They sponsored the film.
On every subsequent viewing. And just then come back and now you can understand what we're talking about. But I think one of the opening lines of the film is, it's just like, it's a date of, on the night of September 21st, 1945, I died.
Yeah.
And then it's just like,
it just sets the tone. You're just like,
you're straight there.
You sit up and you're just like, oh
God, like the first line of the film. And there's these guys going around, because he's just sitting in a train station, Seita. And there's these guys going around, here's another one, glaze over eyes. He's dead, like he's gone. There's no saving him. And all around the room is just corpses of young people. Yeah. This is hard.
This is the opening of an animated film.
Yeah.
And you're just like...
Which was doubled with My Neighbour Totoro in Japan. Imagine going to see that double feature. God. It'd be powerful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but go see this lovely, wonderful film about childhood innocence, and then you see, My Neighbour Totoro. That's a joke. And then you see Grave of Fireflies, and you're just blowing it open. Because you can't escape the fact that he's dead at the end.
Oh, yeah.
This film is about death, and all that you're going to witness is the steps toward that point.
Yeah.
And like you said about directing, it's just making sure you don't fuck it up.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Writing it. And that's where I think Takahata really excels, is because he can sit down and dissect the, real emotions to get to that point. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And not just put something in for cheap. You've seen his other films.
Yeah.
So things like Only Yesterday, something like that, when it deals with real emotion, you genuinely feel it.
Yeah.
And whereas with Grave of Fireflies, it's not like they push it in your face, like you're saying. It's just you are living their experience.
Yeah. It has this, it's like I don't know how you call it, like a naturalistic stylization where, and so if you want to talk about the actual animation itself and the drawings, it has that kind of look of Ghibli at the time, but the drawings don't call attention to themselves. It's like the emotion comes from beneath the drawings, which I think is something he says all the time of his own work, where it's not about the actual drawings themselves. They're not striving for realistic drawings. They're striving for like an emotion and like an interpretation of a feeling, and that's projected through these drawings. And I think that's a great way of kind of, describing the film. There's so many excellently observed nuance to like the acting to Setsuko, the little girl who just, half the film is just her being a little girl in this horrible, horrible time, and the way she scratches her head and throws her arms around somebody, it's just, it bowls you over when you combine that with what they're going through. That's that whole thing of the juxtaposition of the innocence and the beauty beside the war, and this brutal, unforgiving time, and it just makes everything kind of exaggerated or more effective in how it communicates.
I definitely think it's a really good point about juxtaposition, because I was reading an interview with Takahata and the author of the book, Akiyuki Nosaka, I think it is, and he's basically saying that they were trying to make their own little heaven in this hell, basically, because they just run away. And as well, an interview I was reading with Takahata was the same one, where he said what attracted him to the story was the fact that he was so sure that back in the day, Japanese kids were very stoic and enduring, and that they just take it on the chin. Whereas with Sita, when he is scolded by his aunt, he runs away with her.
Yep.
And just like he runs away. He just gets out of there. He doesn't stand and take it. He doesn't endure. He escapes and then sets up their life in this old bomb shelter and essentially kills them.
Yeah.
You know?
It's that decision that,
and just the kind of things that I don't want to talk about going through things, but just everything that he sets up to get to that stage and how they slowly degrade, like, is something that the author thought you could only do through animation, because you can't actually starve kids while shooting a film, for live action, and especially not back then. You know, Takahata, he in the film, well, I assume it's his decision because he was quite controlling. He made the outlines brown. Did you ever notice that?
No.
I never noticed it either. It's kind of like tinted brown a bit to kind of pull away from those harsh black lines.
Wow.
It's little small little details like that. It's cool, isn't it?
Yeah, he was very controlling, wasn't he?
He was.
It's almost like a topic for another.
Yeah, well, we can dive in. No problem.
It's gas because I don't know loads about him, to be honest. But when he passed away, was it last year? You had all these stories come up, and everyone was like, "Oh, an incredible person and genius," and then you had these other people saying,
he was a bit of
a dick.
Yeah,
you know,
very super controlling.
Yeah, to the point where he was, burning people out, and his strive for perfection was his greatest strength and weakness. Yeah, and you hear about this a lot. With people who are perfectionists, they strive so much, and but they burn people and they push people away, and it's like perfection comes at the expense of other people. And
would you say you're the kind of person?
Probably am, yeah. No, but it's true, because I think myself, Alex, and Ben enjoying in a lot of ways. Yeah, we have that kind of strive for perfection. I mean, everyone does in some way or form.
Of course.
I think you kind of look at someone like Takahata though, and you go, "All right, there's a point where
it gets really insane.
It can't come at the expense of people, relationships." So yeah, it's really interesting to look at a work like this by someone. I think this is incredible film, absolutely incredible, but someone like that who's spearheading it, it's crazy.
Yeah, as well. And I think because even similar things happened to Miyazaki over the years, where I think it was just as he was doing Princess Mononoke, that one of the directors he thought was going to take over Ghibli died of. He had a brain aneurysm. He had an aneurysm from stress, basically, because of how hard the guys were pushing the studio, which is horrible, And I think I actually read an article where people were blaming Takahata for that.
Was that because I definitely read something where someone had openly said, "It's your fault he died." Yeah. And he said, "You're probably right." Yeah. He didn't even he wasn't like, it was like,
yeah, but that's how introspective he is. He's just like, okay, yeah, you're probably right. I was watching a documentary on the making of The Tale of the Princess Kaguya, and I think even at that stage, Takahata had realized how much he pushes people, so he was so super chill about things, but it was bad because he was taking a very long time to do anything, and that pursuit of perfection was causing the producer to lose his mind, because nothing was on schedule, everything was over budget, and he had 2 weeks where they were trying to figure out how a knife enters a melon, because he didn't like how it had happened in Grave of Fireflies. There's a scene where he finally gets a melon and opens it up. He doesn't like how the knife enters the melon. He's like, "Oh, it's too easy. It's like tofu. It should be a bit harder." And he had all these guys in the studio sitting around with knives, cutting into melons and recording the footage over and over again. Like that pursuit of perfection, which I get and I love, but again, if it's at the cost of other people.
It has to be a balance.
Yeah, exactly.
There has to be a balance. And I mean, I think any director, I feel anyway, is only as good as the crew and the relationship they have with the crew. And I think if it becomes a dictatorship, then, I mean, it's things get shit really fast.
They do, yeah. And those stories will always come out,
Oh, yeah, definitely. So I think that's something whenever I'm working with a team, I mean, animation is collaboration by its very nature. So why would you want to pull away and just be like, "Oh, I'm the boss and do what I say," and everyone stop what you're doing and do this and do that. It's just like, we're all in this together. It's tough. That's all.
Yeah, win together.
Yeah, exactly.
Win-win.
So don't do it, Takahata.
Don't be like him, but also be like him in how you interrogate the medium. Yeah. Because it is really strong. And What did he do before? Was that his first feature, Grave of Fireflies? I think.
Oh no, there was
um,
earlier stuff.
Little Norse Prince,
yeah.
And also he'd done a lot of TV shows and everything like that. And that's like, I did a video on Takahata a while ago. I remember when I was starting my animation project, his was the first video I always wanted to do, because I was like, okay, I have this guy and I've researched him and how he approaches reality, like you're talking about, how he approaches it. I really want to write about it. So I sat down and wrote out my script and the research, and it was shit. It was so bad. So I was like, okay, this can't be the first one. So I pushed it aside, made some other ones, and then I came back to the Takahata one, and I really reapproached it from the sense that if you are animating, especially his work, when we talk about this kind of pursuit of reality, you know, whereas what you said there, it just kind of comes from this realistic emotion. It's not the drawings you're ever trying to do that come from the reality. But if it's not there, people will pounce on it, you know. So even if it's a scribble, but it's someone rolling down a window, how that kind of wrist locks around the thing and everything, you know, how it moves in relation, and the fact that that's even observed makes it more real than someone just like a robotic arm doing it down. And his pursuit of reality is really interesting. And especially with Grave of Fireflies, he was saying that it's very easy to animate broad emotions in animation because, like, and that's why they have these swings of wild emotion in anime all the time. Like, it's just wild emotion after wild emotion.
Sure,
It's either, you know, if they're crying, it's so many tears. It's buckets and buckets. If they're laughing, it's a huge hysterical laugh, because it's easy to exaggerate in animation by its very nature. So that's why I really love Grave of Fireflies, because everything's so subtle.
It's so restrained.
Restrained is a great word. Yeah.
And I think it wouldn't have worked if you know, if the sister dies and he's like, well, you know, it's more, it's the gut punch comes from the subtlety, I think. And I was saying, you know, it's how like Setsuko. There's a bit at the end, I think, because the whole second half of the film, he's leaving her behind to go and try and get food. And she's like, okay. And then eventually she's like, oh, I'm hungry. And then eventually she gets to the point where she's starving to death. Yeah. But she just doesn't want him to go. And I think she just throws her arms around him. She's like, I know I'm starving, but I'd rather you stay than be alone and starve. You know. But it's the nuance in how he's observed, I think, just not just the physical interaction, but the way she looks at him and the way it's just, that subtlety is so powerful. And it wouldn't have worked. That scene wouldn't have worked the same if she had been like, don't leave. And he's like, oh, you know.
And then shouting at her and goes through an array of emotions.
And I rewatched, you know, the film, and the scene where she passes away. If you look at any kinetic movement, there's zero. It's just like he comes back and he tries to give her some watermelon, and there's just this very simple scene where she's like, oh, that's nice. And he walks out slowly, and it's like she never woke up. And there's like 5 minutes of footage where nothing happens. And you're just left reeling. And then it starts to show some of the moments, you know, that you know, these little snapshots of her, I think, and just being a little girl. Like memories, so to speak. And it's just these beautifully observed moments where she's wearing his larger shoes and she's like, ha ha ha, you know, sitting on a swing. And it's just so powerful.
It's so tough. And Takahata in his later films often would let people into that fantasy world that they're living. You'd see it emphasized externally. Like in The Tale of Princess Kaguya, when she runs away and she has this fantasy of running away, you see this wild sprint through a forest and the moon is going crazy, and it's beautifully artistically done. It feels like everything is losing control. Whereas in this, just you're outside her world completely. And you're just getting punched in the gut over and over. God, and you're just sitting there like...
But I think I wrote something down yesterday. It was like, there's a powerlessness, I think, to the characters. They're literally powerless in this situation. Yes, he makes the decision to go, you know, into the woods and try and set up a home and for them to be independent, but they're powerless in this situation in that, you know, there's a food crisis, there's zero food, there's very little they can do about their situation. And in some ways there's like a mirror there with the viewer. I think when you're watching it, it's you feel that powerlessness as well, because you can do nothing and you just have to watch this play out. And there's such a power there as well, I think, where you're literally just watching these things happen, and it's just like one thing, another thing, another thing, and they're just getting worse and worse and starving, and they can't do anything about it, but neither can you, and you just have to watch this happen, and then it just...
And then it's over,
and then you're crying.
Without even realizing it.
I thought that was really interesting when I watched it again. I was like, man, it's just like you just have to sit there and watch it.
That's a really good point.
And maybe it was because I rewatched it and I knew what was going to happen, but even still,
it doesn't change it.
I wish I could, I wish they could do something about it. And I was like, there's nothing they can do.
And I know he even tries to like bullet point it where they're kind of at the end walking away, or they're on the train and they're essentially ghosts. You know, it's just like, they're fucking dead. They went through horrible, harrowing things. And exactly like you said, you just kind of have to sit back and watch it.
That's it.
And he says it at the start, he's going to die, but you can't, like, you're just like, oh, whatever, maybe it'll change.
No. Do you remember the first time you watched it?
I was in Galway in college, and I was going through the kind of the whole Ghibli catalogue. And I was also watching all the Disney stuff as well. And it was very late at night. And I remember the apartment. It was my first year in college.
So fragile.
I was just sitting there, and I don't think I slept that night after watching it. And I remember the sun coming up, and I was just sitting there like, Jesus Christ. And I said it to my friend, Dara, to watch it. And he watched it soon afterwards, and he was like, "Oh my God!"
I think I had to go for a walk.
Yeah,
I think I sat in the room for about an hour and just thinking, and then I went for a walk just to try and clean my brain. Yeah. But what I did was I started recommending it to people, as you do.
Of course.
But I recommended it to my parents and my dad. I got my dad to watch it. Wow. My dad is salt of the earth dub. He's,
I saw your dad at when you were playing the Overcoat and you got up for your Q&A.
Oh, Jesus. He goes to everything.
That's amazing.
And he heckles me.
So supportive. Oh, yeah. Let's do
it. But he's like,
what gave you the idea? Yeah. Oh, it's an adapted play.
So he's born and reared in Ballyfermon, as dub as they call him. And, anytime I get him to watch a film, his reaction is usually bleeding stupid.
Really?
Yeah. But I got him to watch this. He loves war films and anti-war films and so on. And he actually was in the army for 30 years here.
Wow.
And he's retired now. But he watched this film with my mum, and I think it was a Wednesday night or something. And I put the film on for them, and I just said, I'm going to turn off your phones, close the curtains. Just do me a favour. It's only 90 minutes long. Just watch the film. And I'm all right, So I watched it, and I checked in about 15 minutes in just to make sure they weren't
on their phones.
And they were just like, yeah, it's fine, yeah. And I was like, okay, finish the film. And I went upstairs and I did my thing. I came back and I knew the film was over. And my dad was just tears streaming down his face. My mother was inconsolable. And my dad turned to me and he was just trying to like fight through the actual tears. And he said to me, I can't believe a cartoon made me feel like this.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was so incredible. I was like, he himself had said, animation's for children.
Yeah.
My son is just, working in this children's industry. And then he was like, wow. He's like, I can see what this can do.
Yeah.
And that was kind of part of my realization as well. But to hear him say that, someone who has, very little interest in animation, passing interest in film, to actually just say like, wow, this film affected me on a fundamental level, and it's animated. For me, it was like an aha moment.
You're just like, finally.
Yeah. And I was like, Mom, what did you think? She was like, I'll ask you later.
Yeah. You never asked her. Yeah.
But a lot of people have that kind of reaction. They
I think with this one,
zero expectation, and it just bowls them over.
Yeah, because it is very easy to dismiss other.
Oh, yeah.
There is a very classic formula in storytelling when it comes to films. Like, it's like the hero's journey essentially, and even with the Orange Eye, when we were talking about Aiden, he was saying like it's that kind of classic of like, you are who you choose to be kind of story over and over and over again, which is nice and wonderful, and they do incredible things, like obviously the Iron Giant, but this is not that.
No,
it's just again a snapshot of what actually happens.
It's like, here's a story from this horrible time in human history, and it's probably just one story of millions. And it's like, it doesn't try to tell you that this is the most important story. It's like, it's almost like a passing, it's coincidental that you happen to see these two kids. Here you are. We've picked two people out of this horrible time. And it's like, imagine what everyone else went through. You know,
and that's the real power of animation as well. And it is obviously a fundamental frustration for anyone who works in the industry.
Yeah.
You know, that's just for kids.
Yeah.
You're just like,
yeah.
How has this not changed?
Yeah, I know, and I know I'm biased in that sense, and I'm very conscious that I'm biased. And I'm like, I love animation. I love, working in animation. I love animated films, but I do still think that we haven't, or we're nearly seeing, like animation reach the masses. If you look at the East, and everyone watches animation. Or in the West, it's generally more. And I understand it. Animation is expensive to make, and then people say, well, it has to be the broadest audience possible, which means it's a family film. Of course, and you see people making chances and making more, adult-orientated stuff like Waltz with Bashir and things like that.
Beautiful film,
powerful films.
Yeah.
I guess we're at a point in our studio where we're looking to make feature films very soon. We've got a couple of ideas and that we think have legs, but I think we want to try and pick one where we try and transcend that. It's tough. It's for children. But the film obviously will have to do well so we can keep making films. But at the same time, we want to, show people in the same way that Grave of the Fireflies showed me that animation's for everyone. Actually, animation is not this genre that's this niche thing. It's actually just this medium, and it can do incredible things if you let it. So I think the types of films we'll make hopefully will be more like this.
I really hope so.
Just not as sad.
Well, you never know. You never know. It's funny you talk about showing your parents. And originally, when I was going to start this podcast, I was like, I have two ideas. I'll either interview people in the industry and get them to choose whatever they want, or I'll sit down with my grandfather who hates animation, hates it.
I'd listen to that.
Yeah, and like pick the top 100, and then let him decide which of the top 100 he wants to watch, and then we sit down and talk about it. And I got very close to getting him, so close. But then we had some bad things happen in our family, and he got distracted and blah blah blah. But I was just like, God damn it, I nearly had you. And he still talks about, remember you were trying to make me watch cartoons. I was like, I know which one to show you now.
Yeah.
Grave of the Fireflies.
Take this, sucker.
Yeah, I know. Take this good punch. He probably wouldn't pay attention, to be fair.
Actually, my dad started doing that. He was like, where's that DVD? I need to give it to your uncle. He started handing it around to people as if to dish out punishment. He's like, that bastard, you're going to make him watch that film.
It's kind of a thing where if you're recommending it, I almost feel obligated to prepare them for what they're about to watch, And it's not just because it's animation, but because this is going to be a tough watch.
Oh, yeah.
And you're not going to want to watch it again ever, but you will watch it again.
And when I picked this film to talk about, I was like, oh shit, I'll need to watch it again. So I kind of split it up into smaller chunks and then went for walks. But when I got my girlfriend to watch it, and again, I felt obligated. I was like, it's a harrowing film. It's beautiful. It's a masterpiece, but it's tough, and it will break you down. And she was like, yeah, whatever. Yeah. I was like, all right.
Okay, good luck.
And she watched it, and she was
jumped
just
out the window.
She said she spent hours just trying to stop crying.
Yeah.
And then I said I was doing this, and she was like, "Oh, what are you going to talk about?" I'm like, "The Grave of the Fireflies," I think. And she was like, "Why would you want to talk about that horrible film?" She's like, "No, it's nice, but I mean, why? It's so sad."
It's true, right? It is so true. And I'd be really curious to hear what people have to say about it then afterwards, what their experiences with Grave of the Fireflies was originally. And again, if you've gotten this far and haven't watched it,
tough.
Yeah, hard luck, you've been spoiled now. But the film in its first minutes spoils it. So whatever.
And it's not about actually the destination. It's actually about how you get there and how all these things happen and how these people the kids are lost and they fall through the cracks in a shitty time.
It is tough.
And actually, that's another one of the points I think I wanted to talk about was the themes of the film about beauty and innocence being fragile and we need to protect it, but it's fleeting. And then this other kind of idea that war kind of dehumanizes people in society, and you look at the film and all these events happen, and basically it's everyone just looking out for themselves. The kid's trying to steal from the farmer, and the farmer's not really a villain in that sense. He's just like, I need to feed myself and my family, and it's just like what war does to people. It kind of isolates them and separates us, and you kind of go each to their own, and this is tough. And I think that's one of the greatest comments it makes about war, is that it just war is shit and we do awful things, but it's also like in this setting, you know, when there's like a food crisis and there's clearly children starving to death on your doorstep, and people are like, I need to feed my kids, so feck off. And it's just that kind of aspect to it that was really powerful as well. You don't see in too many other films, you know, that are based around war and its effect on people.
I think there was one other film, Barefoot Gen. Have you ever seen that?
No.
I've not seen it, but it was made in 1983. It's an anime, which basically is up there as harrowing as Grave of the Fireflies, I think. But I, as far as I know, it doesn't deal directly. It's like this kid who's running around in his bare feet, basically.
Sure.
You know? But when it comes to war and stories, I think Takahata is very staunch in the fact that he's like, this is not an anti-war movie. This is just a movie where war has happened. And I'm not saying, like, he is very staunchly anti-war. He's not saying, oh, fight the, you know, whatever. But it's like the theme of this film is not war or anti-war. It's about these two kids that lived at this time. And he did live in that time. I think he was alive.
He survived a bombing, I think.
Oh, did he really? Yeah. Wow. The firebombing.
Googled on the way.
You did better than me. I was listening to September. Which is sadly true. My friend sent it to me. The author of the book, like, it is a true story in a sense, but he was, I think, older, and his sister was 2. That's the real story. And this is tough. When I was reading that interview, he's like, the author was like, yeah, the real story was it was 2, and it was very similar, kind of, because it's the perfect time. They changed the age to be the perfect time for, let's say, the boy's transition into adolescence, a better sense of who he is, and you know, that kind of becoming a protector or becoming this kind of person, and how he suddenly had to live 10 years in 1 month, like you did making that feature or that short film. And when the author was writing about it, he was saying that he felt so bad about the decisions and everything that he had to go through that essentially killed his baby sister, you know? Wow. And that's why he wrote the book. It was an apology to her. But he talks as well, and he was like, part of me was relieved at the time that I didn't have the burden of her anymore. And which again kind of speaks into that ideology of fend for yourself when it comes to war, even when it's down to that very basic survivability level.
Now I can feed myself. That type of... It's incredible. And
it's
it
crazy,
reduces you to that
self-serving,
self-revolving, instinctual, you know, animal. You're just like...
the rat in the trap.
Screw everything else. I'll care for myself.
Which is a really, really good point. I actually like that you brought that.
And it's crazy that... I guess Takahata sees this as not an anti-war film, when it's probably one of the best, you know, anti-war films, in my opinion, of all time. But it does like excel at just being a snapshot of this period and what these people have gone through, and speaks to the idea that there was just lots of people like this and going through this thing, and we're just seeing this one event.
I'd be really curious to hear, like, obviously Waltz with Pachir and Persepolis and all these films, and I think Piranabar did an interesting animation documentary about refugees coming across on boats and stuff like that. And that's where animation is really incredible at telling stories, because it can not only break into the ideology and just a snapshot of it, but it also can build into the reality of the situation through metaphor on screen. So, like you were saying, the style really informs the story. And it's something that I'd be really curious to see in the future, because we're kind of lucky in Ireland that we don't really go through war or anything like that. Not like those poor people in Syria or anything. But the stories that will emerge through that and how they're creatively told, I think will be very powerful very soon. And that's, like, again, why I think Firefly works so well, is because the creative styling is not realism, but it is as well.
Yeah, it's like, instead of trying to capture reality, they're trying to capture this believability, like a not like a caricature, but like it's like it's meant to represent an emotion, like you know, it's again, it's like, it's not that drawing looks really realistic and therefore I feel sad. It's these drawings make me feel, you know, together in motion with this music. It just kind of all marries together and it captures that feeling.
With that emotion.
Which again, I think is what Takahata is so good at. He observes these moments of human nature and knows how to put these together in time. and play on these things.
And in the best way possible.
Yeah.
By mixing the emotion. Like in Only Yesterday, when she speaks to the boy for the very first time and then runs away up into the air, because that's how light and airy she feels, you know, and that's beautiful. It's so nice.
It's
and
poetic.
It is poetic, yeah. But it also is just like what you're seeing, and to be able to kind of push that poetic emotion on someone, because I think he studied French literature in college or something. He didn't study animation. You know, so he came at it from a very different angle. He came at it from, you know, studying all these great stories and that idea of absurd realities build into these snapshots of beautiful stories, because that's all I ever feel that he told, except for Pompoko, which is a bit mad.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, but it's always just like a little snapshot of a life, you know. And he always brought something else. Like he always challenged the convention in some way in each feature that he did. He didn't do a lot, but when he did, they were really beautiful.
Yeah, no, definitely. Crazy guy though.
Yeah, apart from that, it's very hard not to talk about.
I know, yeah. It's that whole thing. It's like, how can you separate the artist from
the work? Yeah.
And you know, it's horrible to sit here and just bash someone, you know, and that's not the intention.
Yeah, no.
He's an incredible creative genius, I'd
Everyone
say.
has their flaws.
Then it's like, how do you separate that?
Which is very tough.
But yeah, no, I mean, I hold him in extremely high regard and so on.
Definitely for ideas and how we approach the medium, and especially if a film like Grave of the Fireflies can shatter the illusion that animation is for kids, and people who stoically hold on to that without even realizing it, then that's probably the greatest service you could do to the industry. Yeah, you know, big really. Time. Yeah, just open it up.
Suited the medium perfectly. You know, they used animation exceptionally well, and it wasn't in service to make it look cool. It was really in service of the story and what they were trying to say, which is obviously the best way to use animation. Yeah. No, incredible. Really incredible.
What else have you got written there?
So yeah, it was a sad film. He's a bastard, and
oh yeah,
my dad loved it.
You had it all written down there.
There's some great, you know, the spirituality to the fireflies themselves, the whole metaphor and stuff. It's beautifully done. It's very simple, but it's you know, they like some of the only kind of happiness or joy they have in the film is from these fireflies that they use to light up their dank little cave. You know, and the next day they're all dead. Yeah. They're all dead. And then you have to get used to this idea that it's like, this beauty is so fleeting and you have to protect it and blah, blah, blah.
But also pays really, really beautiful. Like it's smart because the fireflies look very similar to
the bombs.
Firebombing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think people have pointed out that on the original release poster, have you seen that?
They artificially, they play with the levels or something, and they could see that the actual fireflies, there was a
bomber, a B-52, I think it is, bomber above them, and you're just like, oh
exactly,
my God.
That's incredible.
He's laid it all out there so long ago, just like, and that again is, I know we're not Takahata doing a good job, unless the marketing guys did that one, you know.
They were like, paint over the bombers.
We'll rub that out a bit.
And he was like, someone will find this one day.
After I'm gone, someone will hopefully find this.
It's just, but it's a simple, beautiful mechanism to tell again the point of the story and push the themes. Yeah. That's it. And that bit at the end where the fireflies come back.
Yeah. Jesus. Because fireflies aren't something we have here in Ireland at all. No. So like for us it's wonderful to see, and they're lovely and beautiful and everything. And now I think every interaction with fireflies, little girl's dead, Setsuko, no. Feed her the watermelon earlier. Yeah. God, it's tough to talk about this.
I'm sorry I've depressed you now.
No, not at all. Look, I always knew this was going to be a tough... let's talk about some of your 2D work. Your confusion. No, I'm really glad that someone did bring Grave of the Fireflies up, or at least... Because I remember you were like, I enjoy Grave of the Fireflies. So I was like, well, I know what I want to talk about here. So maybe try that instead of...
It is a tough film to talk about as well, I guess. And that's not a reason not to talk about it. The Iron Giant's fantastic. There's a lot of great animated films that have inspired me that I'd love to talk about, but this one, it's probably not a film that people really like to talk about. And
it's a really good point.
Maybe they should. Yeah.
I think people who've seen it, you're right, don't talk about it. But when it's kind of like if you all go through the same experience, and when you mention it, it's just like, do you remember that time? Oh God, yeah.
I don't know anyone who's seen it and said, yeah,
Yeah, no.
Everyone's like,
yeah,
holy shit.
yeah, Jesus
Wow,
Christ.
I'll never forget watching that film.
Well, I'll wait and see what my granddad says.
Yeah. It's like, of all the people that work in Giant, if you asked all of those people what their favorite animated films were, they'd say the usual, the Iron Giant, incredible. No, I don't think anyone would really say Grave of the Fireflies. But then if you mention it, if I was to say, well, one of my favorites is, they'd go, oh.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Three emotions.
So it's like, it's one of those films that doesn't really get the attention it maybe needs, or
definitely
people
not.
don't speak about it enough.
Yeah, it's
for such a powerful, poignant film. So that's why I was really happy to talk about it.
It's kind of pushed away into the sad zone,
and that's unfortunate, isn't it? It's like, and sad's a horrible word to use. It's a sad film. It's like The Pianist. That's a sad film. It's like, but it's a powerful, emotional like journey that has a lot to say and teach us. So it's very sad. People say, oh, it's a great film. Very sad.
Very sad. Yeah.
But it's actually, I think, a masterpiece in just storytelling. In writing and animation and everything. It's this beautiful, amalgamation of all these elements, of directing, of writing, of acting, everything. Music. Wow, the music is incredible. And it's so simple, but it all comes together to serve this idea. So I think people should talk about it more.
Yeah, so that's the real takeaway.
And have a good cry.
Yeah. But that's cathartic as well, like it really speaks to. And that's why I love something like Inside Out, because it not just deals with emotion, but it deals with the idea that it's okay to be sad.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And in fact,
it's an important film.
Yeah. It's very, very, very important to cry sometimes. And I really love, I know we're not talking about Inside Out, but I want to for a second.
Yeah.
The bit at the end where she's hugging them and they both press the button. Yeah. Because you feel like happiness and sadness are very similar emotions, and they really cross over in a lot of areas. But you need to cry to feel completed in something, and you really need to actually process something. Like happiness is like a bam. It's just like, oh, this is great. I feel great. But you're not actually processing anything at the time. When you're sad and you're crying, you're actually starting to think about everything and you're questioning everything. So it's a really good place to be. It's hard. That's why not everyone likes being sad, but it's a great thing. Once you're out the other side and you're like, wiping the tears away, you're like,
Yeah, I think that's what, I think Grave of the Fireflies does that as well. It kind of like, it like pares you down to like your core or something. And it just kind of wipes away the bullshit. And you're just like, just watch this. And it's just like someone quietly taking your hand and saying, come on over here, have a think for 90 minutes.
Sit down there,
Yeah, forget about all that crap. Look at this.
Yeah.
And then you're like, holy shit.
Yeah, God, everything's in perspective again. 20 minutes later, the bullshit starts to come back, and you're just like, oh,
fuck this shit.
I have to pay the bills now. Whereas at that point, it's just like, I need to do something with my life. I need to make something.
I was at that point when I was like, do I want to do animation? It's really fucking tough. Like, I've worked late every night this week just to get my assignments in. It's like, it's gonna be a career. Is it gonna get better? Is it gonna get worse? It's like, where am I gonna get a job? And all these different things. And I watched this film and was like, wow. It's like, this is what I want to do. I want to tell stories, not necessarily like this, but stories that reach people at this level, that you unflinchingly poignant kind of portrait of the human condition and, or how we are affected. And that's what I wanted to do, and that's what that film kind of.
How do you feel about getting there? Are you there yet?
No. I'll be there in about 120 years.
I'll keep an eye out
but
for you.
At least to put me on a path where I have some sort of semi-confidence in what I want to do.
And it's starting to fall away slowly.
Talk to me again in 10 years. I'd be like, fucking Grave of the Fireflies.
Why did I do this to myself?
Should have been an accountant.
But I think that's good as well, to challenge yourself artistically. Or at least just challenge the comfort that you kind of go through in life, because a lot of people don't escape that. And when you are faced with something that really, like you said, pares you down, rocks you to your core, and makes you question all the decisions, and like you reaffirms the correct path that you're going on, that is definitely a powerful piece of work that everyone should really be aware of,
Yeah.
and sitting down and showing. I actually can't think of another film that has ever shook me as
definitely
much as this.
there's I think that's what great film does though, right? It kind of speaks to a truth inside you, or
Yeah,
you know,
that's great,
it's something we can all relate to, or something deep down. It's like an itch that can't get scratched by reading a book, or you know, it just kind of it gets you. And I think this is one of those films that just gets you. And there's probably so few films I've seen and that do the same thing. You know, films that come close, but they're in a different, you know, realm or different emotions. But
it's a real amazing thing that it was made. First of all, the fact that people sat down and were like, okay, let's do this. You know, and like if you were to pitch that now,
oh my god,
no,
or imagine showing the first reel.
Oh my
to
god!
Like, to investors or something.
You're like, no, we're
what
not doing this.
have you done?
With my money.
What have you done? I'm a sobbing mess.
Yeah, but
she dies. She's fucking poor.
We can't show this. I can't show kids death.
Make them live in the end.
Yeah. By the way, reverse it all. It's like a dream or something.
That was the day I didn't die.
These poor people. But that's the problem, because you with someone else's money that wants to make money, and that's if you had, you know, if someone believes in your idea and pushes it forward, then it's a great thing. And that's why maybe at the start of his studio, like, obviously he'd proven himself with other films and TV shows, and Miyazaki had as well. So to get like a good producer with them who's able to finance it and then put it out there and believe in it, it's a rare thing.
Oh yeah, and I think, you know, as geographically being in the East, with anime being culturally more popular, and you know, it was probably all the right ingredients for that film to happen. Whereas if, you know, even if the same era that tried to happen over here in the West, you know, people would be like, what the fuck is this? You know, this isn't Looney Tunes or whatever. So, you know, so it's almost, they're lucky in a sense that they were in a culture as well that I think looks at anime. But
as well, actually, another point on that, there are some films that are quite difficult and hard to watch, like Watership Down or Animal Farm or something like that.
I don't know how those films got made.
Yeah, no, I mean,
it's great that they exist, but that's a risk. Someone believed in those people and said, you know what, this is important, we should make this.
Probably because they're adapted from very popular books.
Yeah, that helps. That helps.
But also just the fact that, like, Jesus Christ, these things, or even some of the Bluethian stuff, like, you know, The Secret of Nim, and they get very dark quite quickly. Yeah. Not like Grave of the Fireflies. No. But it's nice to see people experimenting with the stories that people can tell. You know?
And I mean, and they can still be for children, but teaching children about the world they're going to enter and about adult life. It's like, we're going on a rabbit hole now, but like fairy tales, one of the, I think something I read about fairy tales was that the idea was to kind of equip children at an early age with this kind of resilience. You know, crazy shit happens in fairy tales. You know, people die and freaky stuff. And it's to kind of, you know, get kids starting to think about mortality, and you know, get them ready for the world's not a rosy place, and you know, have to be careful, and you know, start to equip them with some of those life skills. I think that's really interesting. You know, and people, you know, you see like a fairy tale film, and anyone would say, oh, it's rosy and happy and has a beautiful ending. Well, you know, actually, if you look at
the original,
you know, it's like crazy shit happens, and not all of it ends nicely. You know,
Little Mermaid disintegrates into foam. You know, she does not marry the prince.
Exactly. You know, and I think, and again, we're going down a rabbit hole, but there's something nice there as well, that some films can also serve to teach children about the world we live in and history. You know, what's happened in the past, and how do we learn from that and avoid it in the future.
And I think that any film that can, or any piece of art that can open that and really push that into educating kids to develop to the world is definitely doing a very good job. And that's why something like Coco was really nice, because it dealt very on the face of it with death, you know, which is amazing. And I, again, when I saw it, I was like, this is exactly the kind of stories that was a film when I saw. I was like, okay, I'm on the right path. You know,
or even The Iron Giant. You know?
Yeah, The Iron Giant, of course. I even did
whoever you want to be, and they deal with death.
The deer. Yeah,
it's just like, what's this? Oh, you know, people die, and you know,
guns kill. Yeah.
But and then if you're a gun, you know what? You can be whoever you want to be. You don't have to listen to people.
Yeah, exactly.
These are important things. I think you know, it's great to see in family entertainment, or
rather than just like, you know, here's an obstacle, get around it, and everyone dances.
Or be the whole, be pretty and marry a nice rich guy. And
Yeah.
you'll live happily ever
Yeah,
after.
happily ever after.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the next story, you're done. The kids are next.
Yeah.
Go for Lion King 2. It's about the kids now, because they're happy. They had their trauma.
Yeah. And I think there's room there. I think for a middle ground. And I think that's again something we would want to do with our feature films when they start up soon. Is to find that balance. You can make something accessible and entertaining.
Yeah.
But still give it an emotional core or a moral, or a message that's very relevant or important. I think there is a balance there.
Yeah.
You could go the opposite way. You could be too much of a, make sure you think about, and then it's like not boring, but it's very inaccessible.
And again, you don't always have to make films with messages. Sometimes it is just fun to just have fun with it. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with watching The Expendables 7.
Yeah. Can't wait to see it.
Whoa.
Yeah. Anyways, yes, Grave of Fireflies.
We went from Grave of the Fireflies to The Expendables
7. What a great
They
transition.
took us an hour.
Anyways, look, I think we'll leave it there because we're starting to go down rabbit holes.
Sure,
I'm sure we can talk about it another time. But thank you so much, Sean.
It's great to be here.
I really, really appreciate your time.
Pleasure.
And guys, watch it again. Good luck. Bring the tissues.
Bring the tissues.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you.